In this video, I'm going to explain how to create a lighting switch family with a generic annotation family inside it. So let's get going. Let's launch Revit and go to Families, New. Let's find Metric Generic Model Phase Based. Hit the Open button. And the first thing I want to do is go to Create tab, Properties panel, and hit the Family Category and Parameters button. I want to change from Generic Model to Lighting Devices, and I'm going to make sure that Maintain Annotation Orientation checkbox is ticked. Hit the OK button. Next, I'm going to press RP on my keyboard to create some reference planes. Go to Draw panel, select Pick Lines option, set the offset to 33 mm, offset it to the right, left, top and bottom. Then I'm going to change the offset to 25, offset it to the right, left, top and bottom. And as well as that, I'm gonna need 2 more ref planes, so I'm gonna change the offset to 10 and create 2 more reference planes. I'm gonna press Escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna dimension this ref planes up. I'm going to change the scale, let's say to 1:5 or 1:2, and actually I'm going to change this to not a reference. Please note, these sizes are approximate, so you should work to your own sizes. Now I'm going to go to Create tab, Forms panel, and select the Extrusion option. Once I am in the Modify Create Extrusion mode, I'm going to select Rectangle option from the Draw panel and draw a square on my outside reference planes. Make sure I lock it. I lock it so my extrusion lines move together with reference planes in case I want to change width or height of my lighting switch. I'm gonna press Escape key a couple of times. Before I finish this extrusion, I'm gonna go back to Draw panel and select Fillet Arc option. Make sure that Radius checkbox is ticked, and let's leave Radius at 5. Now I'm gonna put a fillet arc to all 4 corners, just like so. Press Escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna set the extrusion end to 9. Apply and hit Finish Edit Mode button. Press Escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna open 3D view. Press WT on my keyboard to tile the views and see them side by side. And also, I'm gonna change detail level to fine in both views, just like so. Next, I need to create a box, but before doing that, I need to change the work plane. While in a 3D view, I'm gonna press WF on my keyboard to change the visual style to wireframe. Rotate it just like so, so I could see the bottom face. Go to Create tab, Work Plane panel, and choose Set option. Choose Pick a Plane, hit the OK button, and choose the bottom face, just like so. Now I'm gonna go back to the Ref Level view, Create tab, Forms panel, select the Extrusion button, Make sure I choose rectangle from the draw panel. Tick radius checkbox and let's leave it at 5. I'm gonna set the extrusion end to -12. Draw a square. Make sure that the lines are locked. Press escape key a couple of times. And finally I'm gonna hit the finish edit mode button. Press escape key a couple of times. Then I'm gonna go to the create tab, forms panel, extrusion, and this time from the draw panel I'm gonna choose circle option. Make sure I tick radius checkbox and set the radius to 3. Place 2 circles. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna change the extrusion end to 9 and it's gonna be void. Apply. And finally I'm gonna hit the finish edit mode button. Press escape key a couple of times. Now I'm gonna go to the 3D view. Change the visual style to shaded. Looks good. I'm gonna need 2 more reference planes. So I'm gonna go back to the ref level view. Press RP on my keyboard. From the draw panel I'm gonna choose pick lines option. Set the offset to 10 mil. Make sure it's set to not a reference and create 2 planes. Press escape key a couple of times and I'm gonna call these planes 1 and 2. Press escape key a couple of times. Now I need to open right elevation view. Zoom in. From the create tab, workplane panel, hit the set button and make sure that the reference plane is set to center left right. Hit the OK button. Now I'm gonna go to the create tab, forms panel, extrusion, and draw a line 3 mil up, 25 mil to the right, and join the lines. Now I'm gonna select all the lines with the tab key. Press MV on my keyboard and move it to the center. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna zoom in. Now I'm gonna align this extrusion line to this top surface. So I'm gonna press AL for a line on my keyboard and lock it. Press escape key a couple of times. Also I'm gonna press DI on my keyboard and place a constraint of 3 mil right here. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna change the scale to 1 to 2. Now I'm gonna set the extrusion start to -7.5 and extrusion end to 7.5. Hit the apply button. Press escape key a couple of times. And finally hit the finish button. Press escape key a couple of times. Next I need to change the workplane, so I'm gonna go to the create tab, workplane panel, hit the set button and make sure I change to a reference plane 2. Hit the OK button. Now I'm gonna hit the extrusion button from the create tab, forms panel, and draw a line 3 mil up, then 25 mil to the right. Join the lines. I'm gonna press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna select all the lines with the tab key. Press MV on my keyboard to move it to the center. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna hit the AL on my keyboard and align the extrusion line to the top surface. Lock it. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna press DI on my keyboard and place this constraint of 3 mil. Press escape key a couple of times. And finally I'm gonna leave my extrusion start as -5, -7.5, and extrusion end as 7.5. And finally I'm gonna hit the finish button. Press escape key a couple of times. Now I'm gonna go to the ref level view, select the extrusion I just created. I'm gonna press DM on my keyboard and mirror this extrusion around center left right reference plane, just like so. Press escape key a couple of times. Finally I'm gonna select the middle extrusion, copy it to clipboard. Then from the drop down I'm gonna choose align to same place. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna select the middle extrusion and mirror it around its edges. So I'm gonna press DM, choose right hand side edge. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna select the middle extrusion again, press DM on my keyboard and mirror it around its left hand side edge, just like so. Press escape key a couple of times. In the next step I'm gonna create the following parameters: box height, width and depth, all type and length parameters, plate height, width and depth, all type and length parameters, and then 1, 2, 3 / gang one-way switches, all type, yes, no visibility parameters. Let me show you what I mean. If I go to the properties panel and hit the family types button, new parameter, I'm gonna call it box height. Length, type of parameter length, yep, type, hit the OK button. Then box width, okay, box depth, okay, then plate height, plate width, and plate depth. And finally I'm going to create 3 yes no visibility parameters. So I'm going to call it gang, one-way switch. I'm going to copy it. It's going to be yes no parameter and I'm going to group it under visibility. It's going to be type parameter. Okay. Then two gang one-way switch. Same yes no visibility type. And finally 3 gang one-way switch. It's going to be a yes no type of parameter and I'm going to group it under visibility. Finally hit the OK button. Okay. Let me now dimension this up and assign those parameters to those dimensions. So I'm going to zoom out, press DI on my keyboard. I'm going to hit this EQ sign, press escape key a couple of times, select this dimension and choose plate width, press escape key a couple of times. I'm going to press DI on my keyboard. Make it equal, press escape key a couple of times and choose plate height, press escape key a couple of times. I'm going to move these dimensions slightly down. Yep. Press escape key a couple of times. DI on my keyboard. Zoom in, and let's dimension the box up. Make it equal. Press escape key a couple of times and choose box width. Zoom out. DI. Let's make it equal. Press escape key a couple of times. Select this dimension and assign it to box height. Press escape key a couple of times. I'm gonna need 2 more reference planes, so from the right elevation view I'm gonna press RP on my keyboard. From the draw panel I'm gonna choose pick lines option, set the offset to 9. Let's make it to be a weak reference. Offset it up. Set the offset to 12. Offset it down. Press escape a couple of times. I'm gonna press AL on my keyboard and align the top surface of the plate to this reference plane. Lock it. And the bottom of the box, the bottom surface of the box to this reference plane. Lock it. Press escape a couple of times. I'm gonna press GI on my keyboard and I want to dimension up. Well, you can't see it, but if I press top, I'm gonna dimension these 2 planes. Again, top, dimension this up. Press escape a couple of times. Assign this dimension to plate depth parameter and this dimension to box depth parameter. Press escape a couple of times. Now I need to test it. If I go to the properties panel, hit the family types button, let's change the plate height and width to 100 mil. Yep. Change it back to 86. Then let's test the box height and width. Yep. Let's test box depth to, let's change it to 25. Yep. And finally, hold on a second. Yep. 12. And finally, let's test the plate depth. And I have forgotten to lock some of the elements. I'm gonna hit the OK button. I'm gonna press AL on my keyboard and align this extrusion, this void extrusion to this reference plane and lock it. I'm gonna press escape a couple of times. Edit extrusion, shift this whole thing up. Align this to this reference plane, lock it, press escape a couple of times, finish it, then edit this one, same thing, move it up, AL for align, lock it, escape a couple of times, finish it. Select everything, move it up, press escape a couple of times, AL for align, align it to this reference plane, lock it, press escape a couple of times, finish it, press escape a couple of times. Finish it, press escape a couple of times. Let's test it again. Looks good to me. The next thing I want to do is create switch types. So if I go to Properties panel, hit Family Types button, press New Type button, the first switch type is going to be called one gang one-way switch. Okay, and I'm going to untick these checkboxes. The second type is going to be called two gang one-way switch. I'm going to untick this checkbox and tick this checkbox instead. And finally, the last type is going to be called three gang one-way switch. And I'm going to untick this one and tick this checkbox instead. Let me double check it. Yep. Yep. Correct. I'm gonna hit the OK button. The next thing I want to do is associate these switch buttons with yes/no parameters. If I go to the ref level view, select this button, in the properties dialog box, press this rectangular button and associate it with one gang one-way switch parameter. Okay. I'm gonna press HH on my keyboard to temporarily hide it, just to get it out of the way. Then select these two switch buttons and associate it with two gang one-way switch. I'm gonna press HH on my keyboard. And finally, I'm gonna select these three switch buttons by holding the control key down and associated with three gang one-way switch. And I'm gonna unhide the hidden elements. Press escape a couple of times. Now I want to indicate what I want to see in a plan view when I import this family into a real project. So if I select the plate first, go to Properties dialog box and press this edit button against visibility graphic overrides. And because I don't want to see that 3D element, I need to untick this checkbox against front back. Again, when it comes to detail levels, it's down to company standards, so you should check, at what level you need to see what. But for now, I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to hit the OK button, and I want to repeat this procedure for all the elements I see in the ref level view. I'm going to press escape a couple of times, select the box, edit, and tick this checkbox. OK. Press escape a couple of times. I'm going to select this switch button, edit, and tick this checkbox. OK. Press HH on my keyboard to hide it. Select these two buttons, edit, and tick this checkbox. Hit the OK button. Press HH to temporarily hide it. And finally select these three switch buttons, edit, and tick this checkbox. Hit the OK button and unhide the hidden elements. Press escape a couple of times. Once that's done, I'm gonna add an electrical connector. So if I go to the 3D view, press WF on my keyboard to switch a visual style to wireframe. Rotate it slightly. Then go to Create tab, Connectors panel, and select electrical connector option, then select back face of the box. I'm gonna press escape a couple of times, and I'm gonna leave, because this is just an example, I'm gonna leave the settings as default ones. I'm gonna press escape a couple of times, press SD on my keyboard to switch a visual style to shaded. I also want to apply material to the 3D elements I created. So if I select the plate, and in the properties dialog box, I'm gonna press this button with dots against material section, then create a new material, and let's call it plastic white. Then I'm gonna find, let's say I'm gonna type plastic, and let's see what can I find. Let's choose this one, PVC white, for example. Hit the OK button, and I'm gonna apply this material to all the 3D elements I created. So I'm gonna choose this box. Okay. I'm gonna choose this switch button. Okay. Press HH to hide it temporarily. I'm gonna unhide it, and here in the 3D view I'm gonna change the visual style to realistic, just to double check. Yep. Seems okay to me. I'm gonna unhide it and change the visual style back to shaded. Press escape a couple of times. Please note, this is just a basic material explanation, as this subject is out of the scope of this video. The last thing I want to do is create generic annotation. So if I go to File, New, Annotation symbol, select Metric Generic Annotation, hit the Open button, delete this text, go to Create tab, Detail panel, select Line, from the drop panel select Circle, tick this checkbox against radius, let's leave it as 1, and place the circle in the center. Press escape a couple of times. Let's place a filled region. From the Create tab, Detail panel, select Filled region. From the drop panel, select Circle. Tick this checkbox against radius, and let's leave it as 1. And place the circle in the center. Press escape a couple of times. And finally, press Finish Edit Mode button. Press escape a couple of times. Let's draw a line. From the Create tab, Detail panel, select Line, and draw a line at 60 degrees and let's say 4.5 long. Press escape a couple of times. As well as that, I wanted to make sure that these two checkboxes are ticked. Next, I'm gonna create text indicating 1, 2, and 3 gang switches and associated with relevant parameters. I'm gonna go to the Create tab, Text panel, select text option, edit type, and I'm gonna duplicate it. I'm gonna call the new text 2 millimeters, 0.8 width. Okay. Change the text size to 2 millimeters and width factor to 0.8 millimeters. Okay. Place text 1. I'm gonna shift it slightly up, just like so. I'm gonna make 2 copies. I'm gonna hold the control key down, and by selecting it I'm gonna drag it to the right hand side. So I've got two more copies. I'm gonna rename this to 2 and this one to 3. Press escape a couple of times. Let's go to the Create tab, Properties panel, hit Family Types button, and let's create 3 yes/no parameters, and they're going to be instance parameters. So the first parameter is going to be called one gang, one-way switch. I'm going to copy it, press Ctrl C. So as I said, it's going to be instance parameter. It's going to be yes/no parameter, and I'm going to group it under visibility. Okay, and 2 more. 2 gang one-way switch parameter. Yes/no, and here I'm going to choose visibility. Okay, and finally the last one is going to be called 3 gang one-way switch parameter, instance, yes/no, and I'm going to group it under visibility. Okay, hit the OK button. Let's associate the visibility of this text with the parameters I just created. So if I select the text and press on this rectangular button against a visible section and choose one gang one-way switch, then select this text and associate it with 2 gang one-way switch, and finally I'm going to select this text and associate it with 3 gang one-way switch. Press escape a couple of times. Then I'm going to move this text so they all align. And finally I'm going to select everything, press MV on my keyboard and move everything up so the whole annotation sits on top of this reference plane. Press escape a couple of times. Next thing I want to do is load this generic annotation family into the lighting switch family. Place it in the center and associate their families. Let me show you what I mean. So if I go to Family Editor panel and hit the Load into Project button, place it in the center, just like so. Press escape a couple of times. Then if I select this generic annotation family, and if I press this rectangular button against a 1 gang one-way switch instance parameter, and I'm going to associate it with a 1 gang one-way switch parameter I created earlier, which is located in the lighting switch family. So I'm going to repeat this procedure for all the parameters. 2 gang one-way switch and 3 gang way switch. So basically this parameter is located in the generic annotation family, and I'm gonna associate it with the parameter which is located in the lighting switch family. Hit the OK button. Press escape a couple of times. Let's do a quick test. So if I go to the Properties panel, hit the Family Types button, and let's switch to 1 gang one-way switch. Hit the Apply button. Then change to 2 gang one-way switch. hit the apply button, and finally switch to 3 gang one-way switch and hit the apply button. Seems okay to me. Hit the OK button and press escape a couple of times. It is time to test it. I have just modeled basic walls and inserted our newly created family into this project. So if I go to Systems tab, Electrical panel, Devices, and choose Lighting. So I'm going to place it just like so, and first of all I'm going to test it in a plan view. So if I select it, change to 2 gang one-way switch and then to 3 gang one-way switch, it is working. Then I'm going to go to the 3D view. I'm going to select it, press BX on my keyboard to create a box section. I'm going to select it, change to 1 gang one-way switch. Let's change it to realistic. Then change to 2 gang one-way switch. And then finally change it to 3 gang one-way switch. It is working and it looks good to me.